I'm Raz, Mark. So I'm Nev. I'm from the Gerrans and Porthscatho Old Cornwall Society, and my colleague is...
I'm Kate Neale. I'm here representing the Cornish National Music Archive project.
And for me, the story started when my friends at the Cornish National Music Archive did a project about 3 years ago called The Music of the Clay Country, which was just fantastic, and it blew me away. And I thought, well, why are they doing it about the Clay Country when the Roseland is the centre of the known universe for me? And they ought to come down and do a project with us. So we're going to tell you about two projects that we've done, Music of the Roseland and also the Roseland Carol project in the next half an hour. So strap yourselves in as we go through this fairly quickly. And Kate's going to kick us off with the first one.
All right, so Music of the Roseland kind of started as a concept towards the end of 2022 and was planned during 2023. And the idea was to kind of take what we'd done with the Clay Country and look at music that had been known in the Roseland area from all sorts of different genres and styles, and see what we could do to engage local communities with it through a series of events and projects. So in the next slide, we had three main partners. We had the Roseland Music Society, sorry, not the Roseland Museum Society, the Cornish National Music Archive, which itself is a collaboration between Lowender and the Institute of Cornish Studies, and then St Gerrans and Porthscatho Old Cornwall Society. And being as we're up for collaboration, I must say at this point that there's an absolutely massive amount of people without whom these projects wouldn't have progressed. And a special mention comes on the next slide to Emma Campbell, who wrote something for us, which I'm going to read out quickly. So she said, "Sometime towards the end of 2022, a message appeared in my inbox from someone called Meek. He explained that the Cornish National Music Archive had recently put together a wonderful project called Music from the Clay Country and were interested in a new project focusing on music of the Roseland. He didn't think there was much of a musical heritage here to speak of. Whether this was a cunning ploy to get me to bite or an innocent, though to me outrageous mistake, I do not know, but it worked. I'm sorry I can't be with you today to be part of this presentation, but I'm confident my excellent collaborators will be able to give you a taste of the scope of our ambition and the great delight we've had in presenting our findings and witnessing the joyful responses of our community and our visitors to the Music of the Roseland project." So there's Emma from the Roseland Music Society and St Anthony's Noise.
So most of us wear multiple hats, and I also wear the hat as the manager of our Heritage Centre at Gerrans. And this acted as a sort of anchor for both projects, really, provided some funding, provided the research resources, and provided a space for an exhibition as well. The phase one of our project really was to do research, to go through the local history books, journals, archives, manuscripts, interviews, and to hold music memory days with members of the population. And that was a particularly rich source of information as we really got the community, started to get the communities involved in the projects. And what we actually found was, of course, that there's a long musical history, and there's a gentleman there on the head of the slipway at Porthscatho, just to prove that we've got some history in our part of the world. We also, when we started to look back at some of the books, we found things like this, which is a family in the 19th century emigrated from Porthscatho to Wisconsin in America. And they wrote back to us in Porthscatho, and one of the things they included was a poem. And in the course of that poem was this verse, which they said was sung by boatmen in Porthscatho. And it looked to us like it was the chorus of a shanty or something like that. So this was how we started to recover some of the music of the Roseland.
And kind of at the other end of the sort of musical spectrum in some senses, we also had a lot of influence from the classical side of music. So this is largely through Emma's connection. We came across a composer called Ian Stevens, who'd written a piece called Carricknath, a clarinet concerto. And what you can see on the screen here is a photograph of St Anthony Headland with the notes following the contour of the headland as it goes down into the sea, and he wrote a piece of music using this sort of musical figure that was directly inspired by the landscape. Emma's connection also brought us into contact with all this classical music because of her connection with the Radford sisters. Evelyn and Maisie Radford were Emma's mother's cousins, and they settled in St Anthony in 1912. And in the 1920s, they formed the Roseland Concert Party, which took music and dances from many lands all around Cornwall. They set up and trained many choirs, including St Maur's Choral Society, which was recorded by the BBC in 1937, and then later they set up the Falmouth Opera Group and were stalwarts of the Cornwall Music Festival. So this has led to a thriving musical life and society on the Roseland, and the Radford Trust was set up to support young musicians in Cornwall, and it has an impressive archive at Crescent Kerno. So there's one of the things in this classical side was an opera called Morvoran, which is Cornish for mermaid, and composed by Philip Cannon, and Maisie Radford herself wrote the libretto and was premiered at the Royal College of Music in 1964. And we'll come a bit back to that in a minute. Another aspect was the hymn tunes that were named after Roseland Chapel. So we found that there was a Truro-based composer called Bob Martin, lay preacher, who had composed several hymns which had the names of chapels on the Roseland, and they were Porthscatho, Portlow, Ruin High Lanes, and Tregony. So that was another musical source for us.
So these were our principal funders. The partners, actually, the Roseland Music Society, the Old Cornwall Society, etc., all chipped in. I've got a bit of funding from Feast. And also the community chest for your local council is always worth raiding, and Julian chipped in for hours or two. So the next phase was really activity, which started to go into looking at composition, exhibition, workshops, and of course performance. So one of the first things we did is, you'll remember that we recovered that verse or chorus from a shanty. So we gave it to our local shanty group, or Duag Hour. And they then built a whole shanty song, including the music and other verses, around that chorus, so that we now have a completely new and recovered Porthscatho shanty. A really good piece of innovation, I think.
Yeah, it's a really kind of fun way of making this archive material present in present-day communities and giving it a new lease of life. Coming back to Emma, Emma undertook a series of workshops in all four Roseland primary schools in the January of last year, where she got the children playing instruments and involving a piece called the Bahortha Dances, which was written by Anthony Smith Masters, and that is named after a village in the Roseland as well. And then with the Roseland Academy, Ian Stevens, the composer of Carricknaff that we mentioned, did a workshop with year 7, 8 and 9 in the Roseland Academy, where he took an aspect of Morvoran, some part of the libretto, and had the children doing some composition around the inspiration. So that was, the mermaid song from Morvoran was what they were using and exploring and inspiring them as what you could do with music and be a composer. And then on the 9th of February, we had a kind of a grand launch of, or the premiere, the Roseland premiere of Carricknaff, Ian Stevens' piece, and this kind of again drew in masses of musicians that had been linked with the Roseland through kind of the legacy of the Radfords that had come down and played at the Tregony Festival in the 1980s. And it was a wonderful celebration of this aspect of music on the Roseland. And then the very next day we had a memory day.
Yes, so Emma again ran a memory day in the village hall where the children came in and played the Bahortha dances, but also the St Anthony Noise played Cornish tunes. We recovered another piece of music, a piece of jazz music this time, called Waltz on the Roseland by Jack Jazz. But also we started to look at dancing. We included dancing in that, so that there was the Roseland furry dancing. One of the things that we discovered in the project was that on Roseland we'd belong to dance the furry a bit different to the rest of it. Normally you sort of line up 2 by 2 in front of each other and then sort of skip forward and then go round in a circle and on you go again. But in Roseland at Porthscatho and up at Mevagizzy, people line up in a line of 4 and dance it. And we didn't quite realise we were doing it different until this project, which was a nice thing to find out.
Yeah, Merv and Alison were delighted to, Merv and Alison Davey are dance experts and delighted to have the community come in and show them how this particular version of the Furry is danced, and that was an exciting thing to add to it, and also goes into an event that will happen later on. There was a second memory day that was hosted at the Gerrans Heritage Centre, and as Nev will proudly say, was centred largely around tea, coffee and cake, which is a good invitation to get people talking and sharing their memories.
Yeah, these memory days, really so much. People were coming in with bags of material, of music that they had written, or poems, and all sorts of bits of music and memories that really helped us out with our project no end. We also put an exhibition of what we had found together in the Heritage Centre, so that people could come in and see some of the things that we'd found out.
So this was in April we had our sort of second major event, as well as that we had the children's, the workshops and then the memory days. And then here we had a Troil, which is a Cornish evening of music and dance that was hosted as part of the Roseland Festival. So that was an important aspect of what we tried to do with the project, was kind of latch on to things that were already happening and bring Cornish elements of it through the project to new audiences. So that was really fun. And for this Troil, it included the Bray family, who the son, Finley, who's I think 16 or 17, wrote us a new tune for the Roseland Furry, which was taught to the audience or to the participants at the Troil. And then we'd also commissioned a young singer-songwriter and instrumentalist called Martha Woods to reimagine two pieces that we'd found in the English Folk Dance and Song Society's archive that had been collected in Tregony. Where had they been collected? It was Jo Chynoweth, wasn't it?
Yeah, one at Ruin Islands.
One at Ruin Highlands. So she'd reimagined these two songs, which she played, premiered there as well. And then we also had the shanty group Do Hagawa come along to sing. So that was a really exciting part of the project, to have the Roseland Furry and new music out in the open.
on this land, until the Lord calls me to sit at his hand. For this is my Eden, and I'm not alone. For this is my Cornwall, and this is my home.
All right, yeah, that was the Troil. That was absolutely marvellous. And on the next slide, we've got Martha's CD, Golden Furs in Bloom, which she included these songs on.
And then the last one, we mentioned the tunes that were composed with the names of Roseland Methodist chapels. Anna Hawken put them into a new medley, and St Austell Band came along and played them at Philly Fair in August, along with St Anthony Moyes playing some tunes as well.
So, yeah, the legacy of the project is the reinterpretation and reimagination of archive pieces, all of which we're really proud that we're going to have on the Cornish National Music Archive website, so that they're freely available to anybody who wants to find out more about music of the Roseland or use those pieces themselves. So we're really pleased that this project highlighted music collected with the Roseland across all different styles and kind of aspects, and will hopefully inspire performers in the future. And on the next slide, it just gives us a list of some of the people, and organisations that we managed to collaborate with across the course of that project.